I got speed. Got it? Speed. Surely a significant portion of the middle classes fled New York City and moved to the suburbs, thus arrayed... Tell me when. I got speed. Al? Surely a significant portion of New York's middle class has fled the city and moved to the suburbs and thus eroded the tax base. But that's nothing really very new. It's happened in a lot of big cities. But there are some significant factors that do explain New York's present crisis.
Believe it or not, folks, it's happening. Mayor Beam responsible for the closing down of this firehouse.
I think that's not fair. Why should people get laid off?
Well, the mayor says there isn't enough money to pay him.
Well, I don't care what he says. It's just a dumb old bum.
My fucking life is involved! My life is involved!
1975, the city of New York is fundamentally bankrupt.
Who's going to pick up the garbage?
That's the city's problem. The city wants to satisfy everybody, give us our jobs back. We'll pick up the garbage. We're all good workers. Every man on his job is a hustler.
We didn't have the money for payroll. We didn't have the money to pay our teachers. We didn't have the money to pay firemen or sanitation workers, even our police force.
When A.B. became mayor, we thought, hey, we're in. You know, he appreciates the cops and he's going to take care of us, etc., etc. Didn't work out that way.
It's a desperate time for the men and women who no longer have jobs.
I don't think the mayor really thought through, I'll lay off tens of thousands of people and continue just doing what I do.
I'm not talking. Did you hear her? I'm not talking.
One gets the feeling that there is not a lot of faith in government today. Why should there be faith in government? Government has let the people down. Government has made promises and broken them. Government has failed to respond to the citizen in the street.
The worker making $10,000 a year is more important than a bank that garners up $400 million in profits. Money!
I'll tell you my relationship to Mayor Beam. He was a neighbor of mine in Bell Harbor, Queens, right off the beach. He was well known. He had been budget director. I knew he wanted to become mayor. And we'd stand for hours, taking in a little sun and talking politics and government. I guess then I called him Abe, and I asked him, "Abe, what do you think about the future?" He reached into his bathing suit and he pulled out some tiny, minuscule notes written in tiny handwriting. He says, "This is my program." And he starts reading to me everything he would do as mayor to help the city economically. I said, "Abe, what if you go in the water? You lose the whole program." And he laughed and he said, "No, I have it up here too. I have it in my mind."
When he walked down the steps of City Hall today, it was clearly Mayor Beam's day, a day that he's worked for the last 23 years in city government. Mayor Beam says that during his administration, he wants to be a matchmaker, wedding New Yorkers to their city so that once again they'll be proud to call themselves New Yorkers.
If you go to central casting for mayor of the city of New York, and you had A. Beam, come on. He just didn't look the part, he didn't act the part, and he was not an expressive public speaker.
We intend to make our administration
a model of honest government. We intend to be open in our dealings.
Abe Beame came into City Hall with this reputation as a good man with figures. He very quickly found out that the city's debt was grossly understated. He thought it was $2 billion. It was about $6 billion.
We want to earn the public respect for our governmental institutions by showing that we can provide high-quality service and that we can operate on a fiscally responsible basis.
It took a while for him to accept that the situation was what it in fact was. I remember he said to me plaintively, "Jay, let me ask you, how did we get into this?"
Most of the money that the city could play with, came from selling New York City bonds.
Offering this morning is $324,900,000. 0 bonds, City of New York.
So all the banks would get together in a room and whack it up. I'll sell $2 billion worth, I'll sell $1.5 billion. And for every one they sold, they got a commission. Lots of money. You didn't even have to know anything.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the City of New York is offering for competitive bidding sale 260 million tax anticipation notes, of which 100...
The banks competed to buy these bonds and resell them to the public. And so bankers' representatives would put their bids into a little tin box, and then I would go out and ceremoniously remove them, and we would go into my office and compute which one of their bids was the best from the standpoint of the city, and then we would award the bond to the successful institution.
Ray, can you hear us?
Yes, I do. I wish to announce that the city is accepting a bid submitted on a competitive basis at auction by a syndicate headed by Chase Manhattan Bank. The interest rate is 7.69. Thank you very much.
If you do have any people that are interested in them, I think you can tell them they'll be better than a 7.
Yes, sir. Will do. Mr. Kupferman, I certainly will.
Municipal bonds were considered the safest of investments. And back then, the city was run for people who lived here. Really did live here.
Mrs. Resnick, I understand you own some bonds. Is that right?
Yes, I do.
Why did you buy them?
Well, I'm sending a son to college, and I thought the money that I would get, the interest I would get on the money would help me defray the cost of the college.
What about yourself? Are you depending on that money to live?
Absolutely. This is all I have in this world, and I've got to have that money.
Mrs. Kessler, I understand you hold some New York City bonds. What were you going to use the money for?
Well, I do want it for the both of us, for retirement purposes. Maybe we wouldn't just have to live on the dregs. Maybe with our municipal bonds, we would be able to live a little bit more comfortably.
Mr. Kessler, would you like to say anything?
Not really. I think my wife has said everything.
We certainly don't have too many luxuries after all these years of living.
The years leading up to the financial crisis were a time of great optimism in New York City. Optimism about the power of government to do all of the things that need doing.
The city was spending money based on a liberal philosophy of helping people live better. This city, for a very, very long time, gave a real opportunity to people that came in and had nothing, and they were given that chance.
Start 10:15. DE2 is closed.
The city of New York was the only place in the United States that provided a university system and a community college system that was absolutely free. It was a pillar of opportunity.
My own father came to this country at age 15, not speaking a word of English. He was the beneficiary of a free education at the City College of New York. That was the spirit of New York.
The city was progressive. And I came to New York because I thought the things I believed in could be much better accomplished here. My work was a realization of the idea that I could deliver universal health care, that I could do wonderful care for the people that was essentially free. And the fact that we were opening neighborhood family care centers was a great part of the progress.
You may bring your child in at 8 in the morning, and we close at 6.
There was a great deal of caring for people who had been left out and hadn't been cared for. It was very idealistic and very exciting.
You can look at the history of New York, and in a way, it's always been divided into the big city and the little city. You know, the big city, that's the capital of banking and real estate and all these things. And the little city, you know, the 1,000 individual neighborhoods that are really the core of it.
I came to New York in late 60s, and there was never any doubt in my mind that I wanted to be in Harlem. I loved being up there because it was vibrant, it was alive, and it was coherent. People felt free and comfortable.
Apúrate, maquinista, que hace tiempo estoy esperando el número 6. El número 6.
I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, which was cool. You know, there were Puerto Ricans, there were blacks, there were Greeks, there was Italians, there was Jews. When we first moved there, we were the first Puerto Rican family out of 23 apartments. But being in New York, I had a sense of belonging. I mean, the young Puerto Ricans took over the park. You could hear the music going from one end to the other. It was incredible.
The city had always been interested in providing not only a wide range of public services, but liberal compensation for the workforce of the city.
The city had a public sector with hundreds of thousands of employees, and contracts negotiated over the years provided them with good wages and good benefits. Pensions, health insurance, vacations, things like that.
All through the 50s, 60s, certainly into the 70s, the labor unions were all powerful. During that time, a fellow named Victor Gottbaum was extraordinarily powerful.
It's often said that it was the great giveaway era for the unions. You're smiling. Is that the case?
Because that's a regular ha-ha, you know.
This was a union town, a blue-collar town. I believe Victor Gottbaum represented 100,000 employees. And then the uniformed forces were all represented by unions. The New York City Department of Sanitation was represented by a union. Albert Schenker led the teachers' union. All of the construction jobs were represented by unions. I mean, most of the people who lived and worked in New York were union members.
The workforce of the city, and I'm talking about middle-class, average paycheck folks, all did very well. You could buy a house in Brooklyn or Queens. Your kids could go to a good school. You could retire. It was pretty good life.
Did I like the idea that we were putting people through college? Did I like the idea that the unions were being paid a lot of money? Yes, I did. I'm a liberal, so I thought it was great.
The liberal spirit at that time was not just consigned to Democrats, because everybody that lived in the city benefited from it.
They can come to New York City, the greatest city in this nation.
We were doing our best to do the right thing, and it imploded on us.
When I became controller in 1974, I made a pledge that I would conduct the first independent audits of New York City's finances. Well, as we started to roll up our sleeves, the chief accountant said to me, "You know, Mr. Golden, every month the city gets back the canceled checks from the bank. There's a closet filled with these canceled checks that have never been reconciled to the city's books. So nobody has ever undertaken to see whether what the banks say the city has in cash is what the city's own books have in cash. That was just the beginning.
They didn't have an accounting system that made any sense. It was chaotic.
Everybody had stuff in drawers. Everybody had buried stuff. And there's got to be a good end to some of this. There were no fucking books.
You want to talk to me? I'll talk to you. Don't make a circus out of it.
We want to ask a question that involves both you and Mr. Golden.
Yeah.
The fact that Mr. Golden had a different estimate of the budget deficit than you did.
Our budget bureau has indicated that their figures are correct, and that's what they're standing by.
Well, I wish I were incorrect, but unfortunately, I think the Bureau of the Budget has been too optimistic.
This disagreement got the attention of the senior bankers, and they started asking questions about additional risk. As a result, interest rates on the city debt started going up quite sharply.
That Mr. Golden hurt the city.
Well, I just put it my way that I think it had an effect.
Well, I think that's akin to the patient saying that the doctor has caused the illness.
I was an independently elected controller, so Mayor Beam was not my boss. And there was a big age difference between us. He was much older than I and had a right to think of me as a kid, which he did. On top of that, Mayor Beam had been controller and was, in a sense, defensive about what he had left behind.
Mr. Beam, a couple of weeks ago, you didn't want to characterize Mr. Golden's motives at that time. You were almost kind toward him.
Nor do I now.
Well, accepting the war between you two has heated up considerably the last 2 weeks.
I just said to you, and I just made the observation, that I am continuing to do the job that I was elected to as mayor, and the only time I will say anything with respect to my former stewardship in the controller's office will be when I want to correct the record and the facts.
A. Beam's background was Brooklyn clubhouse politics. That meant people would come in and say, I'm having trouble with my rent. I need some turkeys for Thanksgiving. And you took care of all those little things. That's the milieu in which A. Beam lived.
I want to know, though, is it proper for me to discuss certain items that would relate to spending money for community improvement in the area now before you as members of the Board of
You might as well mention it.
Okay.
Because the city was so big, there was always money coming in and going out. And so you could promise, if it was going to be a good year, that thing that you wanted there in Brooklyn, we can build that.
There's a common cry at this all-day grousing for better schools, better hospital facilities, better roads, better parks, better libraries. And there's a common answer from the mayor and his men up there on the platform. It's basically, sorry, we'd like to help, but we just haven't got the cash.
We really are in trouble. The present operating budget, which was balanced on July 1st, is now $400 million down.
How does that get remedied?
Well, first of all, the way we can remedy it would be with new taxes, which the mayor ruled out. He didn't say forever, but he ruled out at the present time. And the other way would be to cut the operating expenses of the city right now.
You said that you get along with the construction workers, yet Top Tobin said that this used to be a union town. How do you react to that?
Well, you know, you get carried away at times. This is a union town. It's always going to remain.
Beam has $29 million allocated for construction. He's holding back. You people are the ones that can find out for us where that $29 million is.
We'll give it our best effort.
We know you will, sweetheart. Thanks very much.
The
costs for the labor force in New York City were overwhelming. I mean, in the decade before the shit hit the fan, from 63 to 73, the cost of New York City government grew 3.5 times. That is a big pile of dollars. And that would have never happened without the help of Nelson Rockefeller, who was governor of the state of New York forever.
Nelson Rockefeller was an ambitious governor. He spent a lot of money, liked to build things, liked to do things, and wasn't always paid for as well as one would like.
Adoption of a universal health insurance program. Further improvement of public transportation and other community services. Major expansion of housing and urban development. Let us continue to maintain New York as a model to the nation of what creative, responsible state government can achieve for the people. I thank you very much indeed. Best of luck.
All throughout the 60s, Nelson Rockefeller was the face of Northeastern liberal republicanism, something that doesn't really exist anymore. Here was a man who was a big cold warrior, wanted to increase the military, but was also for public spending on education, civil rights, health care, cultural institutions. I mean, almost single-handedly, he built 80,000 units of affordable housing. For Rockefeller, this was not extravagance. This was civilization.
New York loved him, absolutely loved him. He could be relied upon to be honest and straight, mainly because he was rich and he didn't have to steal. But he was the godfather of the fiscal nightmare of New York City.
Whenever they got into fiscal difficulty, the city would call on the governor to help approve another type of tricky bond, like tax originating bonds or tax anticipation bonds, all of which was hoopy-doopy to raise money with no real assets behind it.
Tax anticipation notes. There's going to be a tax, trust us. Bond anticipation notes. For this bond, we're going to issue another bond. You know, finally, moral obligation bonds. Don't worry, the state won't let itself go bankrupt. You know, trust us.
In late 73, Rockefeller stepped down as governor. One of the people running to replace him was Congressman Hugh Carey. He was a complicated personality. He had been in the Congress 14 years, so he was a real Washington insider. But like Mayor Beam, he was from Brooklyn, New York, so he knew his way around the politics of New York City.
Because Brooklyn gave me a chance, the kind of opportunity that I want for every young man, woman, and child in this great city and in this great state.
Nobody expected him to get the nomination, let alone win a general election. But it was a Watergate year in 1974. People who stayed in New York wanted to sweep with a clean broom, and the one they swept in was Hugh Carey. I was assigned in my baby reporter days to travel on the bus that took his family up to Albany. Nelson Rockefeller never spent a night in Albany. He had his own plane, and he would fly home every night. Hugh Carey and his family were moving into the governor's mansion.
When we visited the Carey family, they were in the midst of making a specialty of the Carey household, œufs avec chapeau, eggs with a hat.
It's always at this point that someone hides a spatula on the toilet, and you have it again.
He had had 11 children, 2 had died. His wife had died, he was a widower. It was really quite a touching story.
Hugh Carey, like all of the smart politicians in New York, knew that there had been a long time deferral of fiscal reality in the state, and that the legislature was always moving the target forward for the next guy. So there was an atmosphere of fiscal crisis from the day that Carey was sworn in.
So help me God.
White Case who blew the whistle. He was representing one of the banks on a new loan to the city, and he went down to City Hall and asked a question.
In early 1975, I was 29, and I went up and I met with the assistant controller, and I asked him a question which he said no one had ever asked before, and I said, you know, you're issuing tax anticipation notes. What taxes do you anticipate receiving? And he actually wrote out some information for me on a yellow legal pad, and I looked at it and I said, goodness, I don't think they have the room to back this issuance. Because if you don't anticipate receiving taxes, because you've collected them already, you can't issue a tax anticipation note. Well, pretty quickly, the show kind of collapsed.
The announcement on behalf of the controller is that the offer, which we had expected to receive and announce at 2 o'clock this afternoon, is now expected at 4 o'clock.
Does this mean that nobody wants those bonds?
We will be making a further announcement at 4 o'clock, and anything further.
That day, nobody showed up. We had a box, and it was there, and the door was open, and the appointed time came, and nobody showed up. Nobody wanted to buy the bonds. That was not good.
The emperor has no clothes, right? And then it was a lawyer representing a bank who blew the whistle. Where was everybody else, you know? Where was Albany? Where was everybody else who's supposed to be watching the fiscal affairs of the city of New York?
The 3 northbound lanes of the West Side Highway collapsed under the weight of a heavily loaded asphalt truck late this afternoon, and some 50 tons of hot asphalt spilled over the service road below.
We're in a recession. We're in deep budgetary trouble. And then we get a third complication, which is that the banks wouldn't lend to the city short-term anymore.
You said that the banks make Jesse James look like an amateur. What would you do with the banks?
If the banks would not respond and treat us as for what we are, an institution that has the welfare of 8 million people to be concerned about, and unless they'd recognize their obligation to the public, then we have to begin to talk about nationalizing.
There was a meeting between the union leadership, the city, and the bankers as to what the banks would be ultimately willing to do. And the banks distributed a document. It was about 3/4 of an inch thick with the terms and conditions under which the banks would assist the city. I was at that meeting looking at Abe Beam, and he was getting red in the face, in a rage. He understood that what was being presented to him was a coup d'etat by the banks. He said, I would rather have the city go into bankruptcy than to turn over the governance of this city to you guys. Basically, he told them to go fuck themselves.
You don't own me. I'm not just one of your many toys. You don't own me. Don't say I can't go with other boys.
This is something that the city brought upon itself with the connivance of its bankers, let it be said. You know, what tends to be forgotten is that for every bad borrower, there's usually a stupid lender.
Citibank was the largest bank, and the chairman, Walter Rist, was a very conservative guy who thought, you know, all the politicians in New York had been irresponsible fiscally. We used to laugh about it, and I'd say you're absolutely right, but why the hell did you lend them money?
You don't own me.
Excuse me, can I talk to you for a moment? I'm trying to buy a bus ticket over at Port Authority. I have $14. I'm just trying to get together $2 more. A half a dollar even. A quarter.
New York City is supposed to be down and out, but its beggars have never had it so good. At least those who go to Omar's School for Beggars. Omar lost his executive job in New York a few years back. At 45, he was on the verge of suicide when a good Samaritan heard his hard luck story and gave him $20. now wearing a disguise to protect his identity. Omar teaches others.
Remember, you got 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, that's all. Go up to the guy, touch him on the sleeve, make your pitch, be polite, say, pardon me, sir, thank you.
As Omar, I tried to explain that in countries like Sweden and Norway, you're taken care of. And I just felt that people in our country should be taken care of, and I'm taking care of them. It's Omar the beggar teaching them how to beg for money.
Point is, you're not going to some guy and saying, give me $100. You're saying, give me $2, $3, $4, $5. That's all you're asking for, because this is what professional panhandling is all about.
Mayor Beam came to see the governor. I'm the new young budget director of the state of New York, and I know roughly what's going on, only roughly. The mayor says, Governor, we have 800 million of notes coming due in 10 days, and we have no way to meet it. Governor, we knew they were having troubles and there was a budget problem. They have 800 million coming due and no way to meet it, and they tell us 10 days before?
A-Beam comes up to Albany with 2 or 3 pages. On each page, there were like 1 or 2 sentences. That was the whole presentation. He didn't have a full-fledged professional presentation of what their problem was.
So we all got to work. They eventually put together the picture. We estimated that the real budget gap in New York City was $4 or $5 billion. It turned out to be very close. It turned out to be 6.
New York's financial situation has grown increasingly serious in these days of inflation and recession. The city is spending more, but taking in less. New York Governor Hugh Carey said the state will advance $200 million to pay one city bill due tomorrow. That will help, but it's a long way from solving the city's problems.
Everybody was tearing their hair out, how terrible this is, all this money. And I said, this is the small one. I said, come the summer, we're going to be dealing with the bankruptcy of the city of New York. The room got violently quiet. Carey took his glasses off, threw them on the table, said, I never want to hear about that again. You didn't talk to me for 4 months.
I came here back in 1970. Someone said, why are you coming back to New York? I said, well, because it's a great city, it's worth saving. I'll never forget, he said, yeah, that's what they said about the dinosaurs.
When I was a child, we didn't have the playgrounds like the kids have today, so our playground was the street. Everybody knew each other. It wasn't like today, the hipsters and stuff like that. Back then, you knew people in the neighborhood 10 blocks away. You had a lot of factories, a lot of good jobs, and there was a bar or 2 bars on every block, for people after work. But back in the 70s, it started falling apart. Buildings becoming abandoned, and little by little, it started eroding and deteriorating the whole neighborhood. You would see a lot of abandoned buildings. They weren't even blocked up with cement blocks or whatever. And that was going on all over the city.
From the late 50s to the early 70s, the population of the city of New York remained the same at 8 million. But during that time, 1 million whites, essential to our tax base, moved to the suburbs, and they were replaced by about the same number of African Americans as well as Hispanics from the islands. It was not easy to get a job, and a lot of people were suffering.
I mean, we had no heat last year, no hot water, no nothing.
Have you been able to get any help from the city or anybody?
This city, what is the city gonna do for me here?
People coming to New York were in many ways the same people who had always come to New York. The poor, the striving, new Americans, all of them looking for opportunity. But the jobs weren't there.
When I was a kid, growing up in New York right after the war, New York was the largest manufacturing city in the United States. Everything from belt buckles to hats to you name it. But by 1975, 30 years later, that was no longer the case.
Originally, when I came here, it was all industrial on both sides of the street. And the last couple of years, buildings have been deteriorating and landlords don't want to fix anything, so everybody's been moving out.
Business in Crosby is lousy, and everybody else around.
There was a tremendous amount of uncharted territory if the leading city in the country would go bankrupt. It's to be avoided at all costs.
Mr. Controller, how would you characterize the city's financial status right now?
Well, this city continues to have enormous reservoirs of financial strength.
In fact, they could stop all the debt service payments, and they didn't have enough money to run the city. Even if we got the labor unions to take cuts, even if we got the banks to take a stretch out, even if we cut the budget, it was clear that we couldn't get out without help from the feds. So Governor Carey and Mayor Beam went to Washington.
In May of 1975, Gerald Ford had only been president for 8 months.
Can't Bob go to the one luncheon, then I drop by over there afterwards?
He was sworn in when Nixon resigned.
Let's do it that way.
He, in turn, appointed Nelson Rockefeller, who was out of a job at the time, to be vice president.
What does a vice president designate do with himself all day?
Well, to review all of the things you've done all your life, all the decisions you've made, be sure that you can answer questions as to why and when. And I guess there are some questions that will be raised about finances.
Rockefeller represented the Eastern establishment of the Republican Party. But the people running the Gerald Ford administration, they were Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. The dynamic duo. On any given day, we didn't know which one was Batman and which one was Robin.
Where's Terry, inside? He's in.
They were young Midwestern conservatives. They detested Nelson Rockefeller, and they didn't think much of doing anything for New York.
One thing I will never forget is our first meeting in the White House. Gerald Ford and Hugh Carey had served together in the House of Representatives for 20 years. They'd swapped votes, stories, and beers. And who's on the opposite side of the table? It's Nelson Rockefeller. Ford says, "Can you shed any light on how the city could get into this much trouble?" The response comes, "Mr. President, I find it almost inconceivable how these people could have gotten into so much trouble." Then he turns to the guy next to it. He says, "What about you, Bill?" Bill Simon, presently Secretary of the Treasury and a former New York City municipal bond salesman. He had been chairman of Controller Beam's Debt Advisory Committee. The rest of us think we're in the funhouse. So Simon tells Ford, when I last knew anything about city finances, they were in good shape. And there's Beam just sitting there.
I don't think it was always clear who had Ford's ear, but over at the Treasury Department, Bill Simon felt very strongly that New York had gotten itself in trouble through its profligate spending, and that the only way to stop it was to be tough.
I can only hope that the travails of New York City will have some impact
on our attitudes as to the proper role of government in our society. We have to, in the federal government, accelerate a comprehensive re-examination of all federal, state, and local relationships. We have to determine whether the priorities, practices, and procedures of the past in all areas, welfare, housing, all assistance programs, such as rent control. I know I'll be ripped on that suggestion tomorrow morning in the newspapers back home, but that's too bad.
Supposedly, New York gave out so much money to the poor, particularly to welfare recipients, that people were flocking to New York to get it. And of course, this is nonsense. I mean, New York's welfare payments, like everybody else's, were determined within certain parameters set by the feds.
A welfare center in Harlem. There are now 1 million people on welfare in New York. And as the national recession worsens, an extra 12,000 New Yorkers sign on every month.
New York City had no ability to turn people away if they qualified for welfare.
R. Robinson.
And here you have William Simon, who'd been a New York bond guy, a millionaire, making it this morality play.
What were they supposed to do? Pay the policeman or send out the welfare check? There's not enough money.
There was a story in the newspaper that Paul Volcker was named president of the New York Federal Reserve Bank. I knew that the Fed had the power to make emergency loans to municipalities. So I figured it was a good thing to get in touch with it.
It was a long time ago. But Dick Ravage and Peter Goldmark came to visit me and said, okay, you're the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and New York is going bust. And what advice do you have for us, and what are you going to do? And I told them, well, the Federal Reserve isn't going to lend you any money. You're on your own.
If it got to the point where a city could not borrow an additional nickel at any price, no matter what the interest rate, it would have real trouble paying the salaries of the municipal employees. Week after week, we were in exactly the position of the small business owner who has a payroll to meet and does not have cash in the cash register.
At the moment, New York City doesn't have the money in hand to get through next week. Public School 79 didn't get its monthly truckload of canned vegetables today. The canned vegetable wholesaler says he's not delivering anymore unless he gets paid cash. And the city is $5 million behind in its milk bills.
I was really concerned. I remember I got my first chest pains. I got a pain, I remember lying down on the couch in my office. We needed credit. And there was one thing left to do that would reassure the banks.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel.
Once we got past understanding that this was real, the question is, what was the solution? And it certainly was not layoffs. From our point of view, it wasn't layoffs.
Once again, we're asked to sacrifice while there is absolutely no sacrifice, asked from corporations such as Citicorp, whose profit margins have gone up almost 100%.
We are here, my brothers and sisters, to demonstrate that banks cannot put themselves above the people of the city of New York. Let me say this to Mr. Riston, who I'm now told has locked his employees in there. They can't even get out for lunch. Let me say, we are asking First National City Bank, come out of the closet and communicate.
What I have to say is going to be very short and very sweet. If it's up to the Potomac Benevolent Association, they won't have $400 million profit next year because they're not going to have it on the backs of cops. That's the way we feel it.
When they're talking about laying off cops, we were laughing. We said, what, are you kidding me? Never happened in the history of New York City Police Department. Never. They never laid off cops, you know, in a million years.
There's a man chasing a guy who just picked his wallet about 2 blocks up.
There were precincts, for instance, the 7-5 precinct. They were doing almost a homicide a day. Somebody was getting killed in that precinct every single day.
Just why the shooting began is still a mystery, but the gunman and his first victim, who may have been able to shed some light on it, are dead. So is the Good Samaritan, another victim of the senseless violence that's part of New York's street law.
The Channel 5, the sense of fear was very great. The anchor man had a gun. The news director had a gun. Most of the reporters had guns. I was the only one who didn't, that I know of. I had this vision of everybody shooting everybody else. It was a strange time.
Crimes such as mugging depend on the criminal's opportunity to be alone with his victim. You can deny him this opportunity by remaining alert in potentially dangerous situations. Look around you. Make sure you are not being followed. If you suspect you are, one possible strategy is to stop at a lighted storefront and wait to see if the suspect passes you by. If he stops too, then you have some evidence that you have been singled out as the target for a crime.
The uniformed forces said, look, imagine this city is shot full of crime to begin with. Imagine what it's going to be like if you don't have cops or firefighters on the street.
I was with Ladder 120 in Brownsville, and we were the busiest company in the world. In the world. We were doing like 10,000 runs a year, maybe 30 times a night. There were times, I can remember one in particular, that we turned into a street. I jumped off and I ran in to start cutting the roof open, and I hear the lieutenant calling me. He's going, Flip, where are you? I've got this thing, it's blowing 20 foot in the air. And I looked, they were fighting a building across the street. I was on a total separate fire by myself.
What type of people go into arson?
I would say there are all kinds of people. Businessmen, kids, family men, and women.
They were basically burning Brooklyn down. Whether it was Gas Can Harry or for insurance purposes. I mean, how could they lay off firemen? How could that possibly happen?
Firefighters were literally dealing with this apocalypse. There were fires everywhere. And William Simon or Walter Wriston was telling them they were making too much money. Good luck. You go put out the fire. You go keep the city from burning down.
This is complete madness again. People are going to die. More people are going to die, and the public has to now be aroused by this move by our man.
Some people once called New York Fun City. Now the police and firemen's unions in New York are calling it Fear City. Travelers arriving at New York's Kennedy Airport today were handed pamphlets by off-duty police and firemen. The pamphlet says the city is so unsafe that visitors should stay home.
Stay off the streets after 6 p.m. Muggings and occasional murders are on the increase. I'm sorry to read this, and it's bothering me. So, but I'll continue. I mean, it's bothering me that this was on at the time. But let me finish it. Avoid public transportation. You should never ride the subway for any reason whatsoever.
I will continue until we're through. That's simple. We're going to continue with this campaign for 18 days. On Thursday, 18th day, that's when we'll quit it.
Come on. You go up to the Lower East Side. It's bullshit. I mean, come on. Wait a minute. I'm going to panic over this. I'm going to get diapers. I mean, come on.
Have you heard of the Fear City campaign?
Of the what?
The police Fear City campaign? The police say that a lot of them are being fired and New York is not safe. How do you feel about that?
Well, I've seen a lot of them around, and I haven't seen any purses snatched or anything else.
Are you aware of the Fear City campaign?
No, sir, I'm not. I just arrived in New York, and I'm not aware of it.
Have you heard of the Fear City campaign?
Oh, yes, I have.
Reaction?
Well, I think it's overstated. I'm not personally afraid of it.
Do not leave valuables in your hotel room. and do not deposit them in the hotel vault. Hotel robberies have become virtually uncontrollable.
The mayor says you're inciting panic.
The mayor should read what we wrote. In fact, if you read it yourself, you'll find out that everything that's written in there is either statistical data that we've gleaned from the fire department or the police department, or things that we've taken directly out of the New York City newspapers.
Well, frankly, I have forgotten that this was the posture of the PBA. How can people who claim to love our city speak of it in this fashion? I think it is disgraceful.
Well, there's all kinds of cities that I rambled around, but New York, now there's a hell of a town. You know, it ain't no lie, and it ain't no guff. They got 5 big boroughs chock full of stuff. They got skyscrapers, subways, and a sea of humanity. Sure, I know New York is dirty and ugly and full of cockroaches and gonorrhea and rats and junkies and hookers, rude cab drivers, bad air and bad vibes and unemployment and... Oh, but it's not boring.
New York City's big financial problems have moved out of the government's accounting offices and into the streets. The municipal treasury is so bare that the city began its new fiscal year yesterday by laying off thousands of workers.
I was a supervisor when the layoffs went into effect. I remember a group of men came in, I gave them their orders, and everybody just went outside and did nothing. More than 2,000 sanitation workers were laid off. Then a lot of the men who were not laid off decided to support their colleagues, so there was a strike.
The top of the news this morning, the Big Apple turning a bit sour. Garbage men on strike in New York City, a wildcat strike that began yesterday, and until it ends, over 25,000 tons of garbage a day will pile up.
I've been living there since 1929. I never seen nothing as ridiculous as this one.
Personally, do you feel anything that you can do as a person?
I don't think there is much that I can do as a person. I mean, perhaps I could write a protest letter to the New York Times.
I love picking up garbage. That's my money. What do you think I throw things in the street for? Because I have a job tomorrow. If I don't pick it up and throw it in the street, I won't have a job tomorrow. What are you kidding? I don't want Mayor Beam to know Friday I'm coming to his house for my 2 kids, make sure they feed them.
I think it's a terrible time to have a strike because it's too hot and it's really a health hazard. So Mayor Beam should get on the ball. I'll get on the beam.
Lay off 2,300 firefighters in New York City. Richard Vizzini, head of the fire union, says there'll be money made out of that. The money, he says, will be made by the undertakers.
The people that are going to be greatly affected by it are the people in the disadvantaged areas, the people in the ghetto areas.
5,000 police officers were dismissed by the city. They were ordered to turn in their badges and guns. The unions are attempting to force the city to reinstate the 19,000 municipal employees, and the city says it simply doesn't have the money unless it receives additional taxing power from the state.
If we want a city of only poor or only rich, we are going in that direction. We are driving the middle class out of the city.
I didn't know if I would be laid off. I mean, I didn't think so. I had 7.5 years on the job. How far are they going to go? Well, guess what? They went to 7.5 years.
We are now experiencing the product of mismanagement in the city over many, many years. What we have had here is political ineptitude.
The union has put up $1,600,000.
to meet any shortfall in the anticipated revenue that the city may face.
Where is the $1.6 million coming from? Where will it go?
The Union Treasury. It'd go right to the Mayor Beam. I'll put the check in his hand.
What about the cops and the firemen? Will they be reinstated also? No layoffs there either?
Bob, I only speak for sanitation men.
They go out on strike, the garbage bill's up. He gets $1.6 million, he hands it to Beam, and he says, here, put all my men back. They're going to get back more than that $1 million because every one of those garbage men is going to be cleaning up the mess that they made for the last 3 days. They're going to get paid time and a half and double time for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, I'll tell you how we feel about it. We're up to here with Beam. They're using us. And I hope to God that the damn city blows up. I'd love to see them cops go because we're tired of being on the bottom of the pile.
Everybody ready? Yeah, go ahead. Governor, Mayor Beam has just told us that at this point there is nothing assured in terms of any special deal with the state in terms of helping the city with its cash crisis. What is the situation?
Well, the mayor is accurate.
Is the state willing to start taking over some of the city functions?
We have a dinner now. We have that would require acts of the legislature, things of that kind. The state is ready, and it must, to help the city in any way possible.
Please, gentlemen.
I was teaching political science at Columbia when the governor called me and said, "What are you doing for the summer?" And I said, "Not much." And he said, "Great. I'm going to appoint this board called the Municipal Assistance Corporation to help negotiate the finances of New York City. And I need you on this board." I had written my doctoral dissertation on the financial relationship between states and cities. So I said, "Okay, Governor, I'm happy to do it."
Governor Carey has been taking a long, hard look at the borrowing habits of New York City. He's been instrumental in setting up a thing called the Municipal Assistance Corporation. It's a new state agency. It's already been nicknamed Big Mac.
Governor, is this board now running the city of New York?
The mayor is beside me, and we want to strengthen the government of the city of New York in this hour of crisis.
So there'll be no misunderstanding. The fact that we're here in a committee to work with respect to the finances of the city of New York in no way is going to deter from my managing the city of New York in the way I think it ought to be managed.
Every bit of New York City's budget had to be accounted for by this group of financial people led by Felix Rowan.
We have asked the heads of the banks to be available to talk to us. We've asked the heads of the unions to stand by and be ready to meet with us over the weekend. The governor is going to ask the legislative leaders to come down here, and we will have all the parties around the table to see if we can build some kind of a structure.
I had no idea who in the hell Felix Rojan was. And I figured, here's another goddamn Wall Street banker that's going to tell us, pull in your belt.
In the language of the early space programs, we've got to go for a couple of orbits, and then we'll see what happens.
I came to know about the compassion he had for the people of New York City, and that just cutting the city's budget was not his objective.
We don't have the power to dictate to the politicians how they establish the social priorities of the city, nor do I think it would be in any way appropriate for us to do so.
Felix was a deal maker in the good sense of the word. Here we are suddenly constructing a whole new path for the largest city government in the country, which involved banks, unions, and politicians. Felix's role was to bring those worlds together.
My sense was he believed in progressive politics and good governance. So he wasn't one of these individuals hostile to government. He was for it. And he wanted to help.
There were remarkably few people working on this. And there were meetings that would start at 8 or 9 o'clock and last till 12 or 1 in the morning.
Can we have 5 minutes while you gentlemen and ladies from British television do your thing, and then we'll get down to our own business?
There was a basic understanding that there was no choice for anybody except to come to terms with this.
Now, the idea is that Big Mac will pick up the short-term debts that the city has to pay at the moment. And if all goes well, it'll pay those debts by raising more money through long-term bonds.
The MAC bonds were based on a very simple premise. You isolated a stream of revenue, in this case the city sales tax, and in effect you issued those bonds against that stream.
1/3.
The Big Mac bond was going to be triple tax-free. How they arranged that is way above my pay grade, and pay you something like 10%. So it seemed like kind of a no-brainer.
I believe it will survive.
The rally, the first of many planned in local communities throughout the city, is designed to encourage the purchase of Little Mac bonds in denominations of $50 and $100 in order to help save New York City from default. I suppose if you believe in New York City, put your money where your faith is.
Yes, I believe in New York City, and I'll do my part to keep this town alive.
We're fighting back. We're facing up to the financial crisis confronting this city. We need your help. I know you're going to give it. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Beam went on television to say that as a demonstration of his own belief in the future of the city, he was taking all of his retirement money and investing it in city bonds. I remember looking at this television set and saying to myself, oh my God, you poor man.
When Big Mac bonds went on the open market, the first billion-dollar batch plunged 10%, $100 million paper loss in a single day. And Mayor Beam was now forced to call for more layoffs and deeper cuts.
You know, I was in communities talking to people who were raising this, am I going to get paid this week? How am I going to buy food? How am I going to pay my rent? So it was a very human problem.
It's a desperate time for the men and women who no longer have jobs because the city is being denied the opportunity to help itself. I can appreciate the frustration and despair of these workers. The failure in Albany to give us our taxing rights has forced us to balance our budget with still further layoffs.
We've been turned upside down. We have no income. We don't know where he's going to get a job. I mean, you put 5,000 policemen alone, not counting all the other civil employees that are out of jobs on the streets. Where are you going to find a job? $95 a week unemployment isn't going to help us. We have a house. We have bills. My son is supposed to get braces. You put 6 years in on a job, and then they turn around and they say, well, we don't have the money to pay you anymore. Where can you go? What can you do?
You have 10,000 bed patients. You do 41 emergency runs a day. You've got about 20,000 clinic patients a day. Now, who can handle that kind of a situation?
It's a tremendous burden that we face, a tremendous problem that we face, and we are certainly in difficulty.
I heard Mr. Beam promise us there would be absolutely no cutbacks in services or monies from the Office for the Handicapped. Remember, there are 1 million disabled people in New York City, and that's a lot of voters.
And here to introduce Mayor Beam is Jim Wehart, Bureau Chief of the New York Daily News. Jim?
Abraham David Beam, Mayor of the City of New York, started at the bottom as a district captain in Brooklyn's Crown Heights section in 1930.
The pressure of this whole business took a great toll on him. I remember one meeting in the governor's office where Beam was looking like this out the window for the whole meeting while the argument was raging around him. The mayor of New York, the fate of whose city was at stake. It's his dignity, it's his history, it's the world as he knows it being refashioned by these upstarts in Albany.
He was still the mayor, but he didn't have this piece anymore. And he didn't have this piece anymore. Big Mac was running the city.
The men that sit on the board of Big Mac, not one of those bankers were ever voted in, and yet they're the ones that are raising the fare.
Felix Rohan, this is attacks upon the working people, upon the riders of New York City. When we get our guns back, the city gets the bridge back. That's it.
What can I tell you? It's a tough rap they gotta take, you know? City's in a hell of a mess.
No wage freezes! Stop Big Mac! 100% unemployed! Time to fight back!
There were protests in the streets whenever we cut anything, including when we imposed tuition on the city university. Destroying one of the clear identities of the city, free tuition for any New York City resident, was just devastating.
What does our society owe to its citizens? Walter Heller?
Well, it's really a question of what, in a sense, do we owe to each other in a democracy. And I think, first of all, we owe each other equality of opportunity, and that's something we have to do collectively rather than individually. And that means, secondly, that those who are denied by the conditions of the economy and the conditions of society, who are denied equal opportunity, have to have a certain amount of collective support from government.
Milton Friedman, how do you approach that question?
And I think putting the question in those terms of what does society owe citizens grossly misstates the issue and is responsible for a lot of our difficulties. And I think what we need is to have a system in which we as individuals can have a greater degree of freedom to pursue our own interests, in which we are controlled less by Big Brother in Washington, in which less of our money is taken off there, and in which taxes are not imposed on us without our having voted explicitly for them.
I once held her in my arms. She said she would always stay. But I must have been mad. Never knew what I had. I threw it all I threw it all
How do you stay cool?
Positive thinking. That's all. You just think positive, think cool, and you'll be cool.
The Americana was the wage deferral negotiations. We were trying to avoid more layoffs in return for deferring wage increases.
Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends?
We have thought that one way to bring fiscal stability to this city is to have all members of it, of the community, move forward together. And a voluntary agreement, as we've always said, would be a highly significant step in that direction. I think the agreement...
You've got to remember, all of these unions represented very different kinds of people. They had different interests in their contracts. It's really what made it complicated.
We're going to have a series of meetings. We started this morning with the governor and his staff. The legislative leaders are coming in. We're going to meet with the labor leadership this afternoon. We're going to meet with the banks this afternoon, and we will be continuing into the night and tomorrow.
I spent a lot of time with Felix, who was extraordinary. He was the most tenacious person I've ever met.
What do you think the chances are of putting something together by the end of the weekend?
You're asking me, is there a chance to put something together from the point of view of both city and state that is self-contained without some form of federal involvement? I don't think there's any chance of doing that.
What form of federal involvement?
I don't know yet, and we won't know until we see how the other pieces of the package develop.
At that meeting, Felix wrote and brought uncommon partners together, and he asked everybody to give something up.
An empty pitcher, right? 6%.
And it wasn't just symbolism. He didn't believe that you couldn't put everybody at the table and get this done.
But it was not that easy. The head of the Sergeants Union came to a
meeting where he walks in and he opens his jacket and takes his gun out of his holster and puts it on the table. And, you know, that kind of set the tone for the negotiation.
Labor leaders had different ways of negotiating. For example, the bridge operator guys. I mean, they could close the city down, you know, open the bridges and nothing gets in.
There were drawbridges all over the city. The workers turned off the controls and walked away, leaving the bridges in the up position. In a city where traffic is impossible on the very best day, that had an immediate and profound effect. So the unions had enormous power.
These negotiations were going generally pretty smoothly. There was a feeling of mutual trust. But when we got down to the issues of reductions in employment, it got to be really difficult.
What are some of the demands? I'll talk about those later, but I think it's enough to say at this point that they've at least doubled what they're asking today from what they did yesterday.
I liked the union people, but Shanker was a different problem. The teachers' union was always a very difficult union to deal with.
Read the socialist viewpoint. Get the viewpoint of what the socialists have to say.
Teachers think they know a lot, and they do know a lot, and I respect them. But they don't know anything about politics.
As New York's money crisis deepened, the Board of Education told teachers they might have to accept more layoffs. The union pretty much said no. And so, the teachers held what their president called the greatest gathering of teachers in the history of the world at Madison Square Garden.
Al Shanker was not like a god. He was a god. Politicians feared him because the pen is mightier than a sword, and this man, you know, wasn't afraid to speak.
We are about to take an action because we have been given no other choice.
We had always felt that you may not get rich being a civil servant, but you always had job security. Now we weren't getting rich and we weren't getting job security. Between 14,000 and 15,000 teachers were laid off. Everybody felt that this was a slap at education. I voted to strike. I did.
We didn't want to strike. We really didn't want to strike. We are forced into the strike.
Why?
Because the things for which the union fought are being asked to be given back.
Our shop classes were cut out because the judge ruled that 90 minutes had to be cut out each week.
That's what he cut?
Yup, shop.
How do you feel about it?
I don't like it because I have photography and it's so great.
What about your class?
Our class is like 53 kids in a 35-room class, and they stand on the sides. They don't pay attention.
Teachers, it's bad because they are the foundation of your society. They are teaching your children. Now, if you cut down teachers and you increase the class, they cannot function.
We understand that the city has problems. We're willing to compromise and we're willing to bend, but we're not willing to see the school system destroyed. And when that's the choice, we have to fight back.
Mr. Shanker, if the cupboard is bare, where are they going to get the money to meet teachers' demands?
I have no idea, but I know that there are certain priorities here, and the priority is to take care of the bankers and not the children, and I say that the priorities ought to be reversed.
Incidentally, a small bubble of hope burst for New York City today. You remember an archivist discovered last week that the city had loaned the federal government $1 million during the War of 1812. He couldn't find a record of repayment. And with interest, that would mean the government owed the city about $11 billion today. Well, the records have been found. The loan was repaid a year or so later.
All of it makes the city's financial situation sound rather doubtful, is it?
No, it's not.
The city probably could have shifted money back and forth in an endless way to keep it going.
And then New York City came up with another piece of financial sleight of hand for which it has become famous. It authorized the payment in advance of real estate taxes.
We hope it'll spread throughout the city. Other business groups and citizens and associations will do the same thing.
Things were deteriorating rapidly, so everybody was scrambling to get whatever they could from wherever.
New York's Mayor Abraham Beame said today he's getting letters from all over the country with money in them for New York City. 25 to 75 letters a day, he said, with contributions from 3 cents to $2,000.
How do you prevent a municipal bankruptcy of this magnitude, bigger than half the countries in the world?
Good morning. We're honored by the presence of a number of distinguished witnesses, and particularly by our first panel, and especially by the Governor of New York.
If you try to accomplish something in Washington, you don't have to deal with 535 people right away. You have to deal with 7 people in the subcommittee.
Now, what we all have to consider is how the people back in our respective states respond to this. If we're going to help you out, we've got to justify it to them, and right now we're having great difficulty doing it. Now, you noted yourself that New York has the strongest municipal unions in the nation. I suggest that they're too strong, and the salaries are inordinately high in New York.
It almost became a position that some people were glad to put us in our place. There was an animosity toward New York that I couldn't believe.
It must be embarrassing to the city slickers of New York to have to call on their country cousins to lend them a helping hand. And I was going to do all I could to save them from this embarrassment.
You know, if New York went bankrupt, who gave a flying fuck? In fact, it's probably good for them because they're, you know, they're arrogant, self-centered, you know, sinful, no good, whatever.
The Mayor of the City of New York, the Honorable A. Beame.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I don't need that, thank you. Now, there's a strong parallel between the great Italian explorer we honor tonight and the city which pays homage to him. Like New York, Christopher Columbus couldn't get financing in his own country.
For all the talk of probable default, no one was yet saying that default was absolutely certain. That's because the city unions may yet come to the rescue. A new effort is being made to borrow the money the city needs from the city employee pension funds.
The plan was all the unions would buy MAC bonds on the grounds that the public employees of the city of New York were in real jeopardy and that they ought to participate in the solution. Al Shanker said that he was not going to buy the MAC bonds.
But an agreement will never be worked out if each time we sit down at the bargaining table, they add more items that have to be negotiated, items which were never on the table before.
I'm sorry to have to tell you that the teachers' pension system has voted against making the commitment to us.
Does this mean New York will default tomorrow?
I would think if this stands, the likelihood is very great that we will default tomorrow.
The phone rang. It was Governor Carey. He asked me to find Al Shanker and get him to change his mind. So I talked with Shanker. We have an interesting talk until 5 o'clock in the morning. And Shanker says, I've got to talk to a few people. I'll call you. So I went home, and Shanker never called.
I helped draft a press release in great secrecy, announcing that we were filing for bankruptcy for the city of New York. After it was written, we said, what do we do with this? And we say, we hide it. We don't do anything with it, but we're ready.
We look forward to the possibility of default in the morning unless a miracle happens between now and 9 o'clock.
You don't expect that miracle?
No, I don't.
The picture in my mind is vivid when the mayor sat down and had a shaking hand, as you can see from his autograph on my wall, and signed the bankruptcy petition. At that point, the mayor called the president.
He was asleep, but we left the message with the officer on duty.
A new day is dawned in New York. We're going bankrupt.
Our top story this morning is New York City, which has $450 million in short-term notes falling due today and not enough money to pay them off. The city has been on the brink of default before, but this time it's looking more and more like the real thing.
Are you an individual bond owner?
Yeah,
Do you think you'll be paid today?
I hope so. I'm not sure.
Eleanor Bissinger is a vice president of Leventhal Incorporated. She's done a lot of research on who might get hurt if New York City defaults. And from the sound of things, a lot of little people are, in fact, going to be hurt. Is the small investor going to lose his money?
He's still holding a debt of the city of New York that will be honored in some way or fashion that nobody knows. Please don't, exactly, right. Please don't tear up the bonds.
All I said was that there was no money until today.
I know.
Mr. Mayor, has a private understanding been reached with the teachers' union in return for cooperating today?
I have made no arrangements with Mr. Shanker at all.
Are you here to get the word on the default, or do you think Shanker's going to come around and release that money?
Well, I'm here to put a little pressure on him.
Well, Matt, when you say pressure, exactly what do you mean?
Punch him. No, we're going to try and twist his arm and explain to him the way he's never been explained before exactly what the situation is, and that he better do it if he really wants to get out of here alive.
You are referring to?
Al Shanker.
Are you more optimistic now than you were last night?
No, I am not.
At this point, the ball is in Al Shanker's court?
Yes, I would say so. It's been there all night.
I think Shanker knew, as did the other unions, that if this all came to a collapse, they were the villains. It was known. Now, were they the villains? No, the city was the villains. Everything that led up to it was the villains. But if the city went over a cliff, welcome Mr. Shanker to page 1 of the Daily News.
What happened inside?
Is the mayor doing some arm twisting, trying to get you to change your mind?
No, you'll have to ask the mayor about that.
If the city declares default today, they'll blame it on the teachers.
Well, I think that's the game, but there's no reason why all the attention has to be on one fund.
Well, they're saying the teachers hold the future of the city right now.
Well, anybody who puts up the money holds the future of the city.
What would it take to make you change your mind, Al?
Mr. Shanker, what would it take to make you change your mind?
I remember Victor coming back to our house in Brooklyn and him saying to me, that fucking Shanker, you know, I almost threw him out the window, and he said I really came close to doing it because he was so obstinate.
And let's go back to Robert Shackney again for an up-to-the-minute report on what's happening at that meeting about New York City's busted bank account. Bob?
We've got 2 hours before the banks open, 2 hours before the start of business, so it is possible still that the default that we're talking about could be avoided.
Well, suppose they don't. What does this really mean in human terms? Does anybody know yet how many people lose their jobs?
Well, no one knows just how badly people will be hurt. The end result, said one banker, is that New York could turn into a Calcutta.
The fear that you are hearing is inchoate. The fear is that the system is going to fall apart and that the consequences would be unknown.
About 10 o'clock, I went down to Carey's office, and the phone rings. It's Shanker. He says, I want to meet with you and the governor, but I don't want any press around. So I said, all right, Al, we'll meet you at my apartment.
Governor Carey has left the office some while ago to meet with Teachers Union President Albert Shanker at an undisclosed location to discuss the current teachers' pension fund as it relates to the New York City crisis.
Has the governor made a deal with the president of the teachers union?
I know of none there. That is, he hadn't indicated any deal to me.
For all the mayors in all the cities out there, it seems the real lesson of this story, after all the hard talk about money, is that it really gets down to something as ephemeral as faith. Faith of the investors who have the right to ask right now if New York has the strength to put its house in order. Or if the recent past is any guide, it does not have the gumption. But if the future holds in it hope. For all the mayors in all the cities out
As
there,
everyone knew, the city was ready to file a bankruptcy petition. But finally, at about 2 or 3 o'clock, Shanker agreed to buy the Mac bonds.
Now, this afternoon, I recommended to the trustees of the teacher retirement system that they make the investment of $150 million.
Can you go through the mechanics of just what it was you did to change your mind? Who do you talk to?
It wasn't talking to anybody that changed my mind. It's the fact that nobody else came forward. And we didn't want to share the responsibility of having the city go down.
You're blocking mics.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Roden, have we avoided default?
Today, yes.
We're ready to hand out the checks right now. And we're asking each of you, those who are here to redeem their bond, please line up in front of 3 windows and the checks will be delivered to you. Let's keep it orderly. It's been a wonderful day and we thank you for your patience.
Okay.
How do you feel?
I feel rather happy, but I never had any doubts.
New York City escaped default on $500 million of debt by less than an hour on Friday, but faces the same problem again in just 5 weeks. So Mayor Abraham Beame was in Washington today seeking federal aid to ward off the new crisis.
Isn't it a fact that what's happened to New York is not the fault of Simon or of the president, but it's simply because you have been buying election for years and years at the taxpayers' expense, that you've had the dance.
The answer, of course, is no.
And you've had the dance, and now it's time to pay the fiddle.
We never ask anybody to give us 1 red cent.
Mr. Mayor,
all we're asking is that the president and the national administration and the Congress give us the same treatment for people that they give to corporations.
It was an especially hectic day for Mayor Beame. Ironically, he was scheduled to receive an award today from the Optimist Club, but he canceled his appearance.
You in on the New York City?
Yes, we had a meeting on New York.
Does it look like things are beginning to move here?
We're just having further discussions, and I'll be back over in an hour and a half to meet with the president.
Do you expect a statement? Do you expect a statement from the president today?
The White House will make that announcement if there's going to be one. There's no discussion of that right at this point. So I'll see you again in 2 hours.
The big 3 of Big Mac arrived at the Treasury Department at 9:30 after catching the first shuttle out of New York. At 10 of 10, they filed into Secretary Simon's office. The meeting lasted 1 hour and 45 minutes and produced virtually nothing.
Mr. Rowan, did you discuss the human aspect of a possible default?
We did indeed. The social dislocation caused by a default, the hardships to the people of the city, the possible cut in services, it certainly seems to be a risk that is so large that every effort should be made to avoid it.
Do you have anything encouraging to take home to the mayor? Anything at all?
No.
People were pushing him to step down. I said, Abe, you can't step down. It's not your fault. Don't even give it a second thought of resigning as mayor.
And now, folks, Mayor Beame will dedicate and cut the ribbon of the Flatbush Senior Citizens League. Here we go.
It got to the point where he was the mayor in name only. He was absolutely devoid of power, and he knew it.
I can't think of a more flattering gift. An appreciation of various art forms brings people together.
Beam was smarter than many people gave him credit for. And he was an honest man, but he was the fall guy. Everything had crumbled, and he was the mayor.
In your meeting with Mrs. Ford today, did you discuss any of the city's problems with her? Perhaps do a little lobbying?
No, she's here for a good time, and I wanted her to enjoy herself.
So you did not discuss the city's problems at all?
No, but I think she saw a lot of signs around which maybe would give her something to remember us by.
Signs of the city's problems?
Yeah, that's right.
One day I remember vividly was on the top floor of Rockefeller Center in the Rainbow Room. He and I were standing looking out over the city, the kind of view that you see in movies, the city seeming to go forever. And the mayor looked out at it and said, "This city is too big to fail. They're not going to let it go down. It's not going to happen."
Members of the National Press Club, the President of the United States.
I had the impression that Ford wanted a hardline speech. I had gotten a call from Cheney asking me to do an independent draft. So I wrote a very hard-hitting speech and sent it over with the understanding it was going to be staffed out. And what happens in the staffing now is it gets watered down. I was shocked when he gave a speech.
The time has come for all Americans to consider how the problems of New York and the hard decisions they demand foreshadow and focus upon potential problems for all governments. Responsibility for New York City's financial problems is being left on the front doorstep of the federal government, unwanted and abandoned by its real parents. I can tell you, and tell you now, that I am prepared to veto any bill that has as its purpose a federal bailout of New York City to prevent a default. I am fundamentally opposed to this so-called solution.
You get on the subway, you get into the bus, and 90% of the people would be reading the daily news. The Post was kind of a joke. My father always referred to the Times as the Uptown Daily Worker. But the news was the paper that the average New Yorker, when there was such a thing, read.
How about you, sir? What do you think about the president's speech on New York?
What I think couldn't be put on the air.
He's got his point of view. We New Yorkers have ours.
Personally, I think it stinks. And he's going to lose an awful lot of votes.
Ford was very deeply offended because he said, "I never said that. I didn't say, I never used those words. This is unfair. I was being much more reasonable than that."
I think Ford probably had a little of that Midwestern suspicion of city slickers and are they taking the American taxpayer and blah, blah, blah. But I think essentially he just got very, very bad advice.
Mr. Ford proposes indeed to put a noose around our necks. We will not accept that fate without a fight.
Determined that the city will survive. We can't punish New York City because it has been a city with a heart.
In that speech, I talked about the impact that this was going to have on everybody. But Gerald Ford and the Republican leadership in Washington simply felt that this was not an obligation the federal government had. The municipalities and states had to take care of themselves.
Some figures from the Federal Reserve underscore the fact that this is more than just a New York City problem. Banks in 26 states have 20%, or 1/5 of their capital in New York securities.
Now suppose a couple of hundred banks in this country became insolvent. What happens internationally now? Who's going to trade with those banks?
En début d'après-midi, les 6 chefs de délégation ont fait une brève déclaration à l'hôtel de ville de Rambouillet. Gérald Ford, la réunion a permis de trouver un esprit de coopération et de confiance. Helmut Schmidt, nous sommes d'accord pour mettre en œuvre les mêmes moyens pour atteindre les mêmes buts.
At the summit, Helmut Schmidt, the Chancellor of Germany, supposedly tells Ford, if New York goes down, the dollar is scheiße. You know, the dollar is shit. He had to be told this. You know, it's ridiculous.
Ford's calculation was mostly political. He was a moderate Republican, and his wing of the party was in a panic over the conservative challenge led by Ronald Reagan.
How would you feel if you got back from Europe and saw on the covers of the leading news magazines the picture of this fellow, Ronald Reagan, is it? Who the president, for some reason, thinks represents a terrible right-wing threat, so he's got to out-Reagan Reagan. This is simply bad advice for the president. He doesn't do very well as a right-wing extremist, thank God.
Governor, if you're just a second.
New York.
You're too enclosed.
What's my message for New York? Well, it's the same message anyplace else in New Hampshire. We've got too much government, and we should reduce the size of the government, and we should turn authority back to the states and the local communities, and particularly to the individuals.
The White House said today
that the fiscal crisis played into the hands of the Ronald Reagans of the world, who thought that government was the problem and not the solution. We were trying to say that government is an essential part of everybody's life. And certainly it was in New York City.
Everything that my family and I accomplished here, I owe to the city of New York. I'm going to be emotional about this. I mean, it gave a bum like me an opportunity when there were no opportunities for people without education, without training, not even good looks. So, I'm from an immigrant family. There's millions of us in the country, and certainly New York City are. And if you look at the people that ran the city in the 1950s and 60s, almost every one of them were maybe first or second generation Americans. Almost everyone. And that was extraordinary. I don't know if any other place can say that.
Public sentiment on federal aid to New York City apparently shifting in favor of aid. A Gallup poll conducted before President Ford's speech opposing aid showed the public 49 to 42% against it. But after the president's speech, the public favors federal aid to New York by 55 to 33%. All the serious people agreed we do not want New York City to default. President Ford began hearing from advisors that this is really going to hurt the country, and you need to step up.
But the political reality was Ford and congressional leadership had to extract a pound of flesh, from New York for any conceivably successful federal bailout.
President Ford continued to apply pressure to the New York legislature to pass its own rescue package, which includes higher taxes. As one White House official put it today, when we see that, we'll believe it.
The New York legislature met in emergency session to begin putting together the $6 billion financial plan to save New York City from default.
I am also a minister, and so I was asked to provide the opening prayer. And I remember that, Matthew 5:14 about the city on the hill, the city of hope, the city of opportunity, the city that was a model. The text says a light to the nation. So I put that in my prayer. It was quite a momentous occasion.
He
Address the chair, please.
Everybody understood how important the city was to the state. If the city goes bankrupt, the state of New York couldn't be far behind.
Number 7 increases the automobile use tax from $15 to $25, and this raises $15 million.
We knew we had to do it on a bipartisan basis.
Herbst. No. Hevesy. Yes. Pesci, no. Mr. Speaker? Yes. Ayes 84, noes 53.
In the eyes and under the spotlight of this nation, we have risen to the responsibilities that was expected of all of us. House stands adjourned until December 3rd at 12 noon.
Well, you know that the people are not going to welcome the news of taxes for the holidays, taxes that impact them. We've tried to do our best to make it the kind of package where everyone has to sacrifice something and not aim it at the low-income or lower-middle-income people.
Hugh Carey gambled his political future on getting the city out of a mess that he didn't create. It's one thing to go out on a limb and try to help the city and fight for it. It's another thing to lash the government for which you're responsible to the mast of the ship that looks like it's sinking.
Once the legislation is completed upstairs, which I expect in due course, then we must tie down the pension fund contributions in the banks. And I'm going down to the city now to do what I can to aid Mr. Rowatton in sealing that agreement.
November 26, 1975. Finally, all the pieces come together. Albany came through with some $200 million in additional taxes. You have the municipal unions, which put up $1.5 billion to back the city's bonds and make concessions as well. And you have the feds who put up a lot of money for the short term, $2.5 billion, to make this work.
I have decided to ask the Congress for authority to provide a temporary line of credit to the state of New York to enable it to supply seasonal financing of essential services for the people of New York City.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How you doing?
Yeah, happy New Year.
Huh? Yes, I think that'd be better, huh? Okay. All right? President Ford's decision to support aid for New York marks a crucial turning point in our continuing struggle to resolve the city's
Even at best, if we succeed in getting this plan off the ground, this city will be a much lesser place.
You say this will be a lesser city. What do you mean?
The city will just have to do with less money. And that will mean that libraries may be open less, that garbage pickups may suffer, that you may have less protection than you have today, that children who are already probably not getting enough education will get less, that poor people will suffer since they are always the first to suffer.
To have a society that is beneficial to all, you have to figure out how to pay for it in an equitable way. Everybody has to pay their share to create it and to help government fulfill it.
The services that you provide for a city, you provide for the wealthy as well as the poor. And if rich people had to pay for private police services, fire services, and whatnot, they wouldn't want to be in a great city.
I was born and raised in New York, and I've wanted to live nowhere else. It has everything that's wrong with society, but it has everything that's right with society. New York was known best as a city that listened to needs and took care of people's needs, which after all, isn't that what our government's all about, supposedly, to take care of people?
Is there really any chance New York can recover?
Sure.
Why?
Because New York is still an enormous part of this country, and I think ultimately the country, the federal government, has to realize that you cannot have an industrially advanced culture without having thriving urban centers.
Do you think 3 years from now it will have worked? If you had to give odds on it.
Oh, you know, I don't give odds anymore. I think it has to work.
Since I was here